You know, we humans, we love labels, don't we? We love putting things and people into these neat, tidy boxes. It just makes everything feel simpler. But what happens when you don't really fit in any of the boxes? That's what we're going to get into today, that fascinating gray area between the two biggest personality labels out there.
So let me ask you, introvert or extrovert? You've probably been asked that a million times, right? Maybe on a first date, definitely on some online quiz you took at 2 a.m. It always feels like this big, final choice you have to make. Are you this one or are you that one?
And for the longest time, that was pretty much the deal. It was seen as this totally black and white thing. You either get your energy from being around a ton of people, or you recharge your batteries by being alone. Simple enough, right? Well, maybe not so much. To really understand what's going on in the middle, we've got to know what the endpoints look like. So, let's start at one end of the road, the classic extrovert. What does that actually mean? What does it feel like?
Okay, the first big sign, a classic extrovert often feels really, truly lonely when they're by themselves. For them, silence isn't peaceful, it's just empty. There's this constant pull, this need to be around other people.
This right here is the perfect example. We literally went out yesterday. To a true extrovert, yesterday might as well have been a year ago. That need to connect with people isn't just something they enjoy, it's a fundamental drive. It's like their fuel.
The second sign is something I think a lot of us are a little jealous of. It is incredibly easy for them to make new friends. They don't just tolerate small talk, they actually thrive on it. It's the doorway to a new friendship. They just dive right in, you know? They find some common ground instantly, they're full of energy, they throw out a compliment, and bam, the other person feels totally welcome and seen. It's like a superpower for them. And the third classic sign? They genuinely love being the center of attention. Now, for some of us, that might sound like a complete nightmare. But for a true extrovert, the spotlight isn't scary. It's comfortable. It's where they shine. See, there's no hesitation, no worrying about what people will think. It's just this pure confidence to step up, take the lead, and just own the moment when everyone's looking at them.
So, okay, we've got a pretty clear picture of an extrovert. But you and I both know that life is way messier than that. It's rarely that simple. And that's especially true when we're talking about who we are.
And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? What if you heard all that and thought, well, yes, some of that is me, but a lot of it really isn't? What happens when you feel like you've got a foot in both worlds at the same time?
This is where the whole idea of a personality spectrum is such a game changer. It says that introversion and extroversion aren't two separate islands. They're just the two ends of a very long road, and most of us are living somewhere in between. It actually comes down to how our brains are wired. Extroverts get a big dopamine hit from social stuff, while that same amount of stimulation can totally overwhelm an introvert. If you're in the middle, you're always trying to find that perfect dose.
So let's cruise on down to the middle of that road. This is where we meet the extroverted introvert, or as some people call it, the ambivert. Let's dive into 10 signs that this might just be the perfect description for you.
Now, what's so interesting is that these first 3 signs are basically a package deal. They perfectly describe that constant push and pull. You're selectively social, meaning you do want connection, but it's got to be with the right people, or it's just draining. And this leads to that classic feeling. You absolutely want the invite, but you also desperately want the freedom to say, you know what, I'm staying home tonight.
And this feeling just nails it. You could have been 99% sure you weren't going to go anyway, but finding out you weren't even invited? Oof, that stings. It's not really about going out. It's about being wanted, being part of the group. Being left out of the loop just feels plain wrong. This next group of signs is all about how you actually experience social events. It can feel like you have an invisible timer because your brain is just processing so much information, and that's why you're so good at spotting other people who look uncomfortable. You notice things. But it's also why you might get talked over, you're often waiting for that perfect moment to jump in, and by the time you found it, the conversation has moved on. Which, of course, is why getting called on unexpectedly feels like a total ambush. It just short-circuits everything. This whole concept of a social time limit is absolutely key. The best way to think about it is like a social battery. You can be having the absolute best time, but once that battery hits red, it's not a slow fade, it's a cliff. That overstimulation kicks in, and the only thought in your head is, I have to leave now. And finally, we get to what's going on inside your head. These last 3 signs are all about a deep need for thoughtful communication. You might overthink telling a joke because you're running all the possible outcomes in your mind first. And that same instinct means that even though you want to speak your mind, you'll probably try to avoid a big, messy fight.
So getting called out in public, that's the worst. It just violates that need to handle things in a calm, respectful way. It's all about processing first, acting second.
So after going through all that, where does that leave us? Well, it leaves us with a much more complex and honestly, a much more interesting picture of personality than those two little boxes we started with.
And this is really the main takeaway here. Maybe the goal was never to find the one perfect label that defines you. Maybe the real power is just in understanding your own unique blend, knowing when you need to be around people and when you need to be alone, and actually giving yourself permission to honor both.
So I'll just leave you with this to think about. What if we all stopped trying so hard to slap a single word on ourselves, and instead we just focused on learning our own personal rhythm? That unique balance of needing the world and needing our own space that, makes us who we are.